Hey folks, this is Rhykker with a Diablo 3 Season 26 Barbarian build guide. This season sees the rework of the Raekor set, which is also the starter set for Barbarians in Season 26. Perhaps to go along with the buffing of the Throw Barb in Diablo 2's patch 2.4, Raekor is being transformed into a charge and throwing build. Now also buffing Ancient Spear and Weapon Throw. So in this video, we're going to go over the gear, the skills, and the playstyle that you want to get the most out of this fun and powerful build. And you can follow along with the written version of this guide on maxroll.gg, link in the description, written by Diablo 3 mastermind Chewy, whose expert theory crafting has over the years shaped the meta of the game. And the gameplay footage you're seeing in the background is by top Barbarian player Rob. So let's begin with an overview of the updated Raekor set. The 2-piece bonus makes Furious Charge refund a charge if it only hits one enemy. The 4-piece bonus gives Furious Charge the effect of every rune and deals 1000% increased damage. We don't care about that because it's not going to be Furious Charge, it's going to be dealing our damage. Next part, for every 1% life you are missing, the damage of your Ancient Spear is increased by 2%. And the 6-piece bonus, hitting enemies with Furious Charge or Weapon Throw, increases the damage of your next Ancient Spear by 5,500% and causes it to release multiple spears from its target. This effect stacks, and each spear throw consumes a maximum of 5 stacks. So that 4-piece bonus means if you're sitting in theory at 1% life, then you'll be dealing triple damage. And the 6-piece bonus is where the fun really comes in. When you throw your Ancient Spear Boulder Toss, which is the rune we're going to suggest, when it hits the target, it's then going to shotgun out in a cone that'll be able to strike multiple enemies. Now there are some key pieces of gear you want in addition to getting the 6-piece bonus of Raekor's set. You're going to need the 300th Spear, which has been buffed to now increase the damage of Weapon Throw and Ancient Spear by 200%, and the attack speed of Weapon Throw is increased by 200%. Nice damage multiplier for Ancient Spear, and lets us build up our 6-piece stacks much faster. Then we also want the newly buffed Ariat's Law. Weapon Throw and Ancient Spear deal 200% increased damage. Weapon Throw generates up to 25 additional Fury based on the distance to the enemy. The generated Fury can now go above the maximum cap by 200 Fury. This is a very interesting and new mechanic to this item. And then lastly, Ancient Spear refunds up to 25 Fury based on the distance of the enemy hit and resets your Fury cap to its base maximum. So this will have interesting ramifications for the use of the Boulder Toss rune, which we'll cover in a bit. Another key piece of gear is the Scholar Salvation Bracers. Increases the damage of Ancient Spear by 200%, and if your Ancient Spear Boulder Toss hits 5 or fewer enemies, double the damage. And then lastly, necessary for this build is a Band of Might. After casting Furious Charge, Ground Stomp or Leap, in this case it's going to be Furious Charge, take 80% reduced damage for 8 seconds. This build is squishy. Unlike most sets, Raekor's has nothing that innately grants you damage reduction, so Band of Might is critical. Now we'll work in some other gear as well that's going to synergize nicely and further maximize this setup. First, we want to work in the Captain Crimson set. So to do that, we're going to take a Ring of Royal Grandeur in our cube. To get a Ring of Royal Grandeur, you can only get this item via bounties. So farm Act 1 bounties to get a Ring of Royal Grandeur. This reduces the number of items needed for set bonuses by 1. So you'll only equip 5 pieces of the Raekor set and 2 pieces of the Captain Crimson set. The belt and either the boots or the pants, it doesn't matter. The Captain Crimson set 2-piece bonus gives you life regen, 20% cooldown reduction, 20% resource cost reduction, and the 3-piece makes you deal more damage based on how much cooldown reduction you have, and makes you take less damage based on how much resource cost reduction you have. We're going to be stacking a ton of cooldown, so this synergizes very well. And there's an interesting synergy here between the Raekor 4-piece and the Barbarian's Relentless passive, which we'll cover in a bit. Now we'll also work in the Endless Walk set, the Traveler's Pledge and Compass Rose, Amulet, and Ring combo. While moving, you take less damage. While standing still, you deal more damage. So while you're charging around, you're going to be gaining damage reduction, and when you're standing still to toss your spears, then you're going to deal more damage. We're also going to take the Ancient Parthen Defender's Bracers. These aren't mandatory, but they give us an extra little bit of damage reduction. When we charge and hit enemies, we're going to stun them, thanks to getting every rune on Furious Charge, and with the Ancient Parthens, each stunned enemy within 25 yards reduces your damage taken by 12%. Again, we're looking for additional sources of damage reduction for this build for Greater Rift pushing, and this will help with that. Then also in the cube, we'll want to take the Furnace. Increases damage against elites by 50%. This build struggles a bit against single target, so this helps against the Rift Guardian. Now we'll go over exactly what we want on every piece of gear, but first a look at the skills. We're taking Ancient Spear Boulder Toss as our main damage dealer. The Boulder Toss rune makes you consume all of your fury, and it deals extra damage based on how much fury you're dumping. Because of that, we only want to be using Boulder Toss when you are topped out on fury. We're going to take Weapon Throw Balanced Weapon. This is not a damage skill, this is to gain our buffs from the Raekor set, gain our buffs from Ariat's Law, and we're taking Balanced Weapon just because it generates more fury. We want to be getting back to max fury and above as quickly as possible to be able to throw another boulder. And remember, thanks to Ariat's Law with Weapon Throw, we can now go up to plus 200% max fury. So as a point of comparison, when you are throwing your boulder at your maximum possible fury with the 200 over cap, you are dealing about 14 times more damage. This is why it's not worth just spamming Ancient Spear whenever you can afford it. Wait to get all the way over capped, because one of those is worth 14 minimum cast boulders. Next, of course, we're taking Furious Charge, and we're gaining all the runes on it thanks to the Raekor 4-piece. You want to be popping this at least once every 8 seconds just for the Band of Might, and more based on need to reposition or build up your charges. We're going to take Wrath of the Berserker Insanity. This is a very powerful barbarian ability. While active, gain 50% increased damage. You're also gaining crit chance, attack speed, dodge chance, and move speed. And we're stacking a ton of cooldown to be able to have as much uptime on this as possible. Next, we're taking Battle Rage Bloodshed. Battle Rage while active gives us a damage buff, a crit chance buff, and the Bloodshed rune makes you deal damage equal to 20% of your recent critical hits to enemies within 20 yards every 1 second. Basically, this is extra passive damage to enemies within 20 yards of you every second. For your final skill, there's some wiggle room here. For GR pushing, we recommend Ignore Pain, Ignorance is Bliss. Ignore Pain reduces all damage by 50% and gains immunity to crowd control for 5 seconds. Ignorance is Bliss additionally gives you life per fury spent. And since we're dumping a ton of fury, that's going to be basically an instant heal. For passives, we're going to take Rampage. This is the strongest barbarian passive. Increases strength by 1% for 8 seconds. After killing or assisting in killing an enemy, stacks up to 25 times. That's 25% more strength. This gives you a massive buff to damage and armor. We're going to take Boon of Bolkathos. This reduces the cooldown of Wrath of the Berserker by 30 seconds, necessary to maintain as much uptime as possible on that super skill. We're going to take Relentless. While below 35% life, all skills cost 50% less fury, life per fury spent is doubled, and all damage taken is reduced by 50%. This has interesting interactions with Captain Crimson's and the Raekor 4-piece. So if you can maintain your health at under 35%, you are activating Relentless, and then your Legacy of Raekor 4-piece, remember, for every 1% of your life, you are missing, your damage of Ancient Spear is increased by 2%. So that's a minimum of 130% increased damage. And then remember, Captain Crimson's gives you damage reduction based on your resource cost reduction. And Relentless is giving us 50% resource cost reduction. So taken together, Relentless and Captain Crimson combines to give us 75% damage reduction while we're below 35% life. For your last passive, you can go with either Nerves of Steel for a cheat death, or if you're ballsy, you can go with No Escape. This increases the damage of Weapon Throw and Ancient Spear by 30% against enemies more than 15 yards away from you. Here's the thing though, remember, Battle Rage Bloodshed is damaging enemies that are within 20 yards. So that means if you take this combo, you want to keep enemies between 15 to 20 yards away from you to benefit from No Escape and from Battle Rage Bloodshed. For your legendary gems, you're going to go with a Bane of the Trapped. Increases damage against crowd-controlled enemies. Arguably the best gem in the game. We're going to go with a Zay's Stone of Vengeance. The further away enemies are from you, the more damage you deal to them. And something that people often don't realize is that you gain its base effect at 0 yards. In other words, even if you are right in an enemy's face, you're still benefiting a little bit from this gem. If you are pushing Greater Rifts, you will need a Bane of the Stricken. Attacking an enemy makes you deal more damage to that enemy, stacking and stacking and stacking, and 25% increased damage against Rift Guardians. However, if it's not taking you more than 2 minutes to kill a Rift Guardian, you are better off using a Bane of the Powerful. This gives you a flat 20% damage buff against everything and 15% increased damage against elites. Now, if you're finding yourself to be too squishy, instead of a Zay's, you can go with an Esoteric Alteration to gain some damage reduction. As for exactly what you want on every piece of gear, on your shoulders, strength, area damage, cooldown, and resource cost reduction. This is an area damage build. That area damage will help spread the damage around. Cooldown is also very important for this build for maintaining as much uptime as possible on Wrath of the Berserker. In your helm, strength, crit chance, ancient spear damage. Amulet, physical damage, crit, crit. Gloves, strength, crit, crit, cooldown. Your chest, strength, vitality, all resist, and for your regular gems, in your helm, you're going for a diamond for cooldown, and in your chest and pants, diamonds for all resist. For your bracers, physical damage, strength, vitality, crit chance. Your belt, strength, vitality, all resist, life percent. Your pants, strength, vitality, all resist. Boots, strength, vitality, all resist, ancient spear. Your band of might, crit, crit, cooldown. Your compass rose, strength, crit, crit, cooldown. On your weapons, strength, area damage, cooldown. For your Paragon Points, you want to max out your move speed, then max out your fury, because remember, the higher your fury, the more fury you're spending, the more damage you're dealing. Then dump into strength. However, you might want to get about 1 million life, so invest into vitality, in order to really get the benefit of that sub 35% life. As long as you have about 1 million life, you can generally afford to stay under 35% of your max life to benefit from those extra multipliers. If you have 1 million life, you shouldn't really be one-shot at sub 35%. For offense, cooldown reduction, crit chance, crit damage, attack speed. For defense, all resist, life percent, armor, life regen. Utility, area damage, resource cost reduction, life per hit, and pickup radius. For your follower, we're going with an Enchantress. For her skills, we're going to take Temporal Pulse for the slow, Prophetic Harmony for the cooldown, Powered Shield for the damage reduction, and Fate's Lapse for its cheat death. We're going to give her the Smoking Thurible token so that she doesn't die, and then standard gear setup. Flavor of Time emanates to us, doubles the duration of pylons. Nemesis Bracers emanates to us, shrines spawn an enemy champion. Oculus Ring. When monsters die, you have a chance of having a pool on the ground, stand in it, deal more damage. Ice Climbers to make her immune to freeze and immobilize effects, and then to give her extra attack speed. Mempo of Twilight, Witching Hour, Talrashas, and 2 pieces of canes. In her gear, stack as much intelligence as possible. Since she doesn't need survivability, put intelligence everywhere, including in gem slots. All of her abilities scale off of intelligence. Now, before we finish, we're going to cover some variants here. If you are feeling still too squishy, there's some changes you can make to be tankier. And that would mean losing the furnace and putting one of your 2 spears in the cube and equipping a storm shield. This will reduce damage from melee attacks by 30%. On your Storm Shield, you'd want Strength, All Resist, Crit Chance, and Cooldown Reduction. If you do that, you'll also want to take the passive Sword and Board. While wielding a shield, reduce all damage taken by 30% and reduce fury costs by 20%, another synergy with Captain Crimson's. Now obviously you have to give up one of your passives to equip this. Relentless might be the option you want to forego, because if you're having trouble staying alive, you probably don't want to be under 35% life. Now if you're running a speed setup and not a GR pushing setup, there's some changes we can make. In your cube, instead of a furnace, since you don't need that extra damage, get a Messerschmitt's Reaver. This reduces the remaining cooldown of one of your skills by 1 second when you slay an enemy. You don't need the Ancient Parthens, so instead put in your cube Fury of the Ancients. Call of the Ancients gains the effect of the Ancient's Fury rune, and your Ancients attack 100% faster. We're going to work Call of the Ancients into the build, and we want our Ancients to attack so fast because every time they hit an enemy, we get Fury back. We'll also drop the Traveler's Pledge and Compass Rose. We'll take a Convention of Elements instead, and a Squirt's Necklace. The convention of elements will give us a buff to our elemental damage, rotating through every element every 4 seconds. Since this is not a rotation-based build, this just means that periodically you're going to be dealing a lot more damage. As for the squirts, while you're not taking damage, you are dealing up to double damage. And we're going to maintain this buff by swapping out our Bane of the Stricken or Bane of the Powerful for a Molten Wildebeest Gizzard. After not taking damage for 4 seconds, gain an Absorb Shield for 200% of your total life per second. The Molten Wildebeest is what will sustain the squirts. In this setup, we're actually dropping Weapon Throw. We don't need all that extra damage, and we also don't need Weapon Throw to regain our Fury because we are generating that thanks to our Call of the Ancients, so take Call of the Ancients together as one instead. That rune will give us 50% damage reduction, and again, we're getting Ancient's Fury for free. We'll also drop Ignore Pain and instead take Warcry Veteran's Warning. This generates Fury, gives us more armor, and gives us 30% dodge chance. And if you want to adjust this build even further for Nephilim Rifts, T16 Rifts, instead of a Messerschmitts in the cube, we're going to take an Ingam. Your skill cooldowns are reduced by 10 seconds for 15 seconds after killing an elite pack. We swap out Fury of the Ancients in the cube for a Gold Wrap. On gold pickup, gain armor for 5 seconds equal to the amount picked up. We'll combine that with a Boon of the Hoarder Gem. 100% chance on killing an enemy to cause an explosion of gold and gain 30% increased move speed for 2 seconds after picking up gold. You'll drop your Bane of the Trap for that one. You'll also drop your Convention of Elements and instead take a Stone of Jordan tuned to physical damage. We don't need the Band of Might anymore because we're getting enough toughness now, so drop that and get Rechel's Ring of Larceny to gain 60% increased move speed for 4 seconds after fearing an enemy, and it innately has a 5% chance to fear on hit. We should be hitting often enough to frequently have these effects applied to us. You'll change the rune on Battle Rage to Ferocity for 15% more move speed, swap out Call of the Ancients for Sprint Marathon for even more move speed, and the Ingam is going to actually give you enough cooldown that you can afford to lose your Boon of Bolcathos passive and instead take Unforgiving. You no longer degenerate Fury, instead you generate 2 Fury every 1 second. In this setup, you should be killing stuff so quickly that you can even afford to lose your Molten Wildebeest Gizzard and take a Bane of the Powerful instead. And that is going to wrap up this guide. But do be sure to stay tuned for our tier list on the best builds of Season 26. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch, Patreon, and YouTube supporters for making these videos possible. If you like what you see on this channel and want to support the creation of more content, you can consider pledging on YouTube or Patreon and unlocking behind-the-scenes content, monthly virtual hangouts, and more. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. Check out these other videos and subscribe to join Rhykker's Raiders for more Diablo content.